Today I'm going to be talking about some more cultural differences between Brazilian people and British people, and in this video I'm going to be focusing on actual people and personal differences rather than country differences, which was the focus of my last video. So I'm going to leave that video linked below in case you want to watch it. And yeah, this video is going to be more like what Brazilians do as opposed to what British people do, because obviously I'm Brazilian and I'm going to talk to you about some things that we Brazilians do as a general rule and that British people don't do, or things that we don't do that British people do, or things that are generally different. Just as a little disclaimer, I know that not all Brazilians are the same, not all British people are the same. In fact, none of us are the same. We're all so wonderfully different. So if you're Brazilian and you do or you don't do some of the things that I say in this video, leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you do differently. And if you're British as well and you do things that are more kind of like Brazilian, then let me know. Or if you're not Brazilian or British, leave a comment below telling me where you're from and whether or not you do some of these things as well. I'd be very interested to know. So let's get straight into the video. So the first thing that's very much Brazilian is that Brazilians are so touchy-feely, and if you know a Brazilian person or if you're Brazilian, you know that they can be very sort of like wanting to hug a lot and give lots of kisses. And when Brazilians talk, they generally speak quite close together. The meaning of personal space here is different to in Brazil. There's not much personal space in Brazil between two people talking, and this is absolutely fine. It's not considered to be rude or anything. It's just the way that we talk, and we kind of like touch the person on the shoulder a lot, and you know, just like lots of touching, and it's not inappropriate at all. And if you go to Brazil, you might think that someone is being inappropriate towards you, or that they are kind of like, they fancy you because they're touching you a lot, but it's just a general thing. Brazilians tend to touch a lot when they talk. It's not like horrible touching, it's just like touching your shoulder or touching your face or your hair, and it's very normal, very common. If you go to Brazil, or if you've met any Brazilian couples abroad, you will see that they're quite lovey-dovey. They usually hold hands and they hug and they cuddle a lot, and they often sit together next to each other. So if you're in a restaurant, you'll see Brazilian couples sitting next to each other, not opposite to each other. I think most British couples tend to sit opposite to each other. When my sister and her fiance are here, we see a big difference, because Matthew and I are not like, we don't show affection in public. That's just us. That's just the way we are. Even though I am Brazilian, I don't really like to show affection in public, and my sister and her fiance are kind of always cuddled up and hugging and kissing each other, and I see a lot of that in lots of Brazilian couples. When I lived in Brazil, it was kind of the rule. When I had boyfriends in Brazil, I felt like I needed to be like really cuddly, otherwise it would just give out the wrong vibe. But I'm so glad that I don't have to pretend to do things when I don't want to with Matthew, because you know, he's just like me and he gets it. And I feel like most British people are like that, especially when we're out. We don't really see lots and lots of couples, unless they're really young couples like teenagers or just falling in love couples. You don't really see old married couples holding hands and hugging and kissing in public, and you see that a lot in Brazil. The next thing is that Brazilians use cutlery for everything, even for pizza, for sandwiches, for burgers. You'll always find a Brazilian eating a pizza with a knife and fork, and I think that's a bigger difference between Brazil and America than here in the UK, because a lot of people here in the UK do eat pizza with a knife and fork, but I think most people in America tend to just eat pizza with their own hands, but especially burgers, hot dogs, things like that, you will always find Brazilians with knives and forks eating. I don't know why. For me personally, it's because I hate getting my hands dirty, and it's kind of like a little bit of a obsessive compulsive disorder that I have with everything. I just don't like getting my hands dirty. But I've started to think that it's not just a me thing, it's a general Brazilian thing, because everybody that I know in Brazil tends to choose knives and forks when they can, instead of just eating something with their hands. And another thing that I've noticed is that in Brazil you get served your food with a lot of serviettes. lots and lots and lots and lots. And here in the UK, you barely get 1 or 2. If we do get our hands dirty, we're quite keen to kind of clean it straight away and have plenty of serviettes for hands, for your mouth, for everything. And here I kind of struggle to find a serviette on the table. If you go to a restaurant, you have to ask for extra serviettes, and I've never had to ask for extra serviettes in Brazil. Brazilians take multiple showers a day, and it could be due to the climate. It's usually a lot hotter in Brazil than it is here in the UK. Even when Brazilians come abroad, they tend to have multiple showers a day. My mum and sister and everybody I know still does that. If I did this here in the UK, it would be kind of like, why are you having 3 showers a day? But it's just something that's very peculiar, and I can only attribute that to the climate and then also getting used to it and continuing to do it. The next thing is that Brazilians say hello and goodbye to every single person in a party, and that can take a long time. If you're greeting everybody with hello and 2 kisses, hello, 2 kisses, it could take you ages to say hello to everybody, and then you have to say goodbye to everybody the same way. And at first I thought it was just something that my mum made me do it, but when I was researching for this video, I found that a lot of Brazilians actually do this. It's not just something that my mum wanted me to do. I've been called rude many a times if I missed a few people in a party in Brazil, and I've never been called rude here in the UK if I didn't say hello personally to every single person in a party. I have a very large family in Brazil. My grandma had, I think it was 12 or 13 children, I can't remember exactly, but it was around about 12 and 13 children. So I have about 12, 13 uncles and aunties. They all have 2 or 3 children. So I have lots of cousins, and a small party like a birthday party has probably about 150 to 200 people. So it's always a huge gathering, and it's always a lot of people to say hello and goodbye to. And I always remember if I was just popping into a party feeling like by the time I finished saying hello to everyone, I had to start saying my goodbyes. Brazilians have a very strong macho man culture, and there's a lot of focus put on men behaving like men, women behaving like women, and this is changing a lot because of the world evolving and things, but I still see that a lot more there than I see here. And you know, like whenever a man does something that's considered to be feminine, it's often said, don't be silly, behave like a man, be a man. And yeah, it's changing slowly, but there's still a lot of focus on just like the macho culture. And speaking of men, Brazilian men are a lot more relaxed about their appearance than British men. It's something that my husband noticed when he went to Brazil, and he noticed that not many men tend to do their hair. They don't put gel or wax or putty or anything. And when my brother was younger and he came to visit me here in the UK, my husband introduced him to some hair products, you know, like the VO5 putty and things like that. And my brother took loads of them home and started to do his hair nicely and introduced it to his friends, and his friends liked it. So it's not something that I see a lot of. I think men just kind of roll out of bed in Brazil, and it's kind of more normal than it is here to see a man not make too much effort with their appearance. The next thing is that Brazilians eat a lot less fast food and a lot more fruit and veg than the British. And I think the reason for that is because fruit and veg are generally cheaper in Brazil than fast food, and it seems to be the opposite here. My mum absolutely hates fast food, and whenever she comes to visit me, if we're in a rush, we'll say, well, let's pop into McDonald's or KFC, and it's like her worst nightmare. She has to go to a restaurant, or she has to go somewhere to eat some fruit and vegetables. She absolutely hates fast food, and because we weren't brought up around it too much, like I said, it was a lot more expensive than buying fresh fruit and vegetables. It's just not something that she's been used to eating, and she doesn't associate that with a meal. Even though I'm 31, she still tells me off when I eat a sandwich for lunch, because she says that's not proper food. You need some beans, and you need some rice and some meat and some vegetables and potatoes. So I think that's kind of like a general thing there. People tend to eat less fast food because fresh fruit and vegetables are cheaper. Brazilians drink super strong coffee. If you ask for a coffee in Brazil, you're gonna get a little shot of espresso. You're not gonna get a mug or a cup or that you would get in Starbucks or in Costa. You will get a shot of espresso, and that's like the general rule. If you go to someone's house and they ask if you want a coffee, you get a tiny little cup with very strong coffee. So that's something quite different. And in Brazil, American coffee is coffee that has extra water added in. So that's how Brazilians see American coffee. The next thing is that Brazilians usually live at home whilst they're going to uni. When I went to uni in Brazil, everybody who went to uni with me lived with their parents. And it's probably still very common. I don't see it changing a lot. My brother goes to uni and he lives at home. Every single person that I know that went to uni lives at home, unless there was a particular university that you want to attend which is not in your hometown, but it's not the general rule. The general rule is that you will try to get into the university in your hometown. If you can't get into that uni, then you'll try and go other places in Brazil. I went to uni in my hometown, my brother went to uni in my hometown, and my sister went to uni in another town. So she was kind of like the different one that moved away from home to go to uni and not the rule. As here in the UK, and I think in America as well, most uni students move out of home and live in halls of residence, or they live in an apartment with friends, but most students tend to live away from home when they go to uni. Brazilians tend to focus on happiness as your goal of life. And British people, and to a certain extent American people, tend to focus more on achievements and accomplishments. That's the way that I was brought up, and that's the way that my mind still works, and that my goal is to be happy in life. Even if I haven't achieved a million things, if I'm happy, then I consider myself successful. And I know a lot of Brazilians think like me, and I think majority of Brazilians think that happiness is your most important thing in life. If you have a happy life, then you are accomplished. The next thing, which winds me up so much, is that Brazilians are rarely punctual. And I'm a very punctual person. I hate when people are late, and I hate when I'm late myself, but Brazilians are not punctual at all. If you're sitting and waiting for a bus, it will not get there at the time that it's supposed to get there. If you're waiting for a train, for a meeting, nothing will be routinely punctual. It's just the most infuriating thing, and it's made me so happy that British people are so punctual in general. Obviously there are exceptions, but in general the British way of life is very punctual. If I'm sitting waiting for the tube will be there when it says it will be there, and I don't see that happening in Brazil a lot. It goes to the point where punctuality is not expected, and people are not punctual deliberately because they know that other people are not going to be punctual. So yeah, it becomes kind of like a snowball effect, and that's not very good. Brazilians show a lot of emotion, and you may have noticed that from my videos because I am very expressive with my face, with my hands, and that's a very Brazilian thing to do. But not just women, Brazilian men also express emotion a lot. If you're having a conversation with a Brazilian, you won't just get a little nod and a smirk, you'll get proper full-on, oh my goodness, did that happen? And personally, I kind of like that. I'm very much like that when I talk to my friends. I find that when someone is talking to me, I want them to feel like I'm listening and that I'm understanding and engaged with the person. But that's a very Brazilian thing to do, and I know that other people engage in different ways. They don't necessarily show all these like emotions and expressions to be interested in what you're saying, but most Brazilians do. So if you want someone to be very interested or to look as though they're very interested in what you're saying, go and have a conversation with a Brazilian. The next thing is that Brazilians answer the question, where are you from, with the answer, I am from Brazil. And that's different. Here in the UK, people tend to take into account ethnicity a lot more and the way that you look. When you meet someone and they ask, where are you from? They don't want to know which country you were born in. They want to know, where is your family from and why you look like you look like. And I I can't say that I'm 100% comfortable with that, and I prefer when people are happy that I say that I'm Brazilian, because I am, and as far as I know, I was born in Brazil, my mum is Brazilian, my dad is Brazilian, my grandparents are Brazilian, but people don't seem to accept that as an answer because they have an idea of what Brazilians should look like, and they don't think that I look like I'm Brazilian necessarily. I get a lot of people thinking that I am Indian or somewhere from Asia or the Middle East, and people just really want to know why I look what I look like. And I get the curiosity, I get why people would ask that, but I think that's a very generic thing in conversation with a British person, is they will always try and look for your ethnicity rather than where you're from. As if you go to Brazil and you ask someone, where are you from? They will say, I'm from Brazil. Regardless of how they look, people there don't tend to focus on ethnicity. They focus a lot more on, if you're born in Brazil, then you're Brazilian. I find people here tend to say, oh, I'm a quarter British, a quarter Italian, and half this and half that. But in Brazil, people just say, I'm Brazilian. And the last thing is that Brazilian people are very positive as a rule. We tend to maximize the positives in life and see the good side instead of the bad side. Most Brazilians are always glass half full instead of glass half empty. And my husband used to say that about me when we first met, was that I used to see like this world covered in unicorns and fluffy clouds and happiness instead of what was actually happening. And that is actually a generic Brazilian thing. I find lots of Brazilians are like this. And one explanation that I think for that is because there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of things that aren't great there. So a lot of Brazilians are dealing with so much hardship on a day-to-day basis, and that you have to find the positives, you have to find the good in things to be able to continue living and to try and be happy. Because if you just see the negatives, your life will go downhill. And there are a lot of negatives to be seen in Brazil, but if you focus on the positives, then you can at least try and be happy. These are some of the things that Brazilians do or don't do compared to British people. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below what video you'd like to see next on the subject of my Brazilianness. And if you enjoy my videos, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my future videos, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!